Lieutenant Amy Porter pressed her back against the cold metal wall of the Mars mining facility. The red dust that had settled on her uniform made her look like a copper statue in the dim emergency lighting. She checked her rifle's ammo count. 23 shots left. Not great, but it would have to do. 6 hours ago, the Zaxri ships had appeared in Mars orbit without warning. Their strange, crystalline vessels had blocked out the stars as they descended through the thin Martian atmosphere. The attack came moments later. Green energy beams cut through buildings like they were made of paper, and strange insect-like troops poured out of landing ships. Amy's unit had fought back hard. They managed to evacuate most of the civilian miners, but the cost was high. Now she was the only one left, hiding in the deepest part of the facility where the thick rock walls offered some protection. She could hear them moving outside. The click, click, click of their hard legs on the metal floors. The sound reminded her of the time she dropped a box of kitchen utensils. But these weren't spoons and forks making noise out there. These were 8-foot-tall insects with weapons that could melt through steel. Amy moved carefully to one of the security monitors that still worked. The screen showed feeds from different parts of the facility. What she saw made her pause. The aliens were acting strange. They moved in tight groups, their weapon arms trembling. Every time there was a noise, they would jump and point their guns in that direction. They looked scared. That's weird. Amy whispered to herself. They're winning. Why are they so nervous? She watched as one group of aliens approached a storage room. A pipe chose that moment to release some steam with a hiss. The entire alien squad leaped backward, bumping into each other like scared kids. 2 of them fell over, their legs tangling together. Amy couldn't help but smile. These beings had powerful ships and weapons, but they acted like they were terrified of their own shadows. She kept watching the screens, and a pattern emerged. The aliens wouldn't go anywhere alone. They stayed in large groups, constantly looking over their shoulders. She checked her wrist computer. The emergency beacon was still sending its signal, but help wouldn't arrive for at least 12 more hours. The battery on her suit would last that long, and she had enough water. The only problem was that she hadn't slept in almost 2 days. The floor of the control room was hard, but Amy knew she needed rest if she was going to survive. She found some empty storage containers and arranged them to make a barrier between her and the door. Then she pulled out her emergency blanket, a thin silver sheet that would help hide her body heat from alien sensors. Through the monitors, she could see at least 50 alien soldiers in the corridors nearby. They were still searching, but they wouldn't come close to her hiding spot. Every time they got near, something would spook them, and they'd retreat. Amy checked her makeshift fortification one last time. She had her rifle within reach, a clear view of the door, and her motion sensors were set. The aliens seemed more afraid of her than she was of them. Maybe that would keep her safe long enough to get some sleep. She settled down on the floor, wrapped in her heat-blocking blanket. The sounds of alien feet clicking on metal continued outside, but they were starting to sound almost like a lullaby. Her eyes grew heavy as exhaustion took over. The last thing she saw before falling asleep was the security screen showing a group of aliens jumping at their own reflections in a window. Commander Vexthal's antennae twitched nervously as he watched the human life sign on the command ship's display. His crystalline vessel hung in low Mars orbit, surrounded by 200 other ships of the Zaxri battle fleet. The situation made no sense to him. The commander's 4 arms moved quickly over the control panels, adjusting the sensors again and again. The reading stayed the same. 1 human, deep in the mining facility, showing minimal movement. His soldiers' reports from the ground only added to his confusion. Report your status. Vexthal clicked to his ground forces through their communication system. Squad leader Kixar's voice came back shaky. Commander, the human is doing nothing. Just lying there. We have the facility surrounded. But what? Vexthal's antennae stood straight up in frustration. The human must be planning something. No warrior would just lie down during battle. Our research shows humans never stop fighting. This must be some kind of trap. Vexthul pulled up the footage from their earlier battles with the human defenders. He watched again as a single human soldier had held off 3 squads of his best troops, protecting the escape of the mining facilities workers. The human had moved with terrifying speed and precision, using the facility's architecture against them. Now that same human was simply lying still. "Show me the thermal imaging," Vexthul ordered. The screen changed to show heat signatures. The human's body heat was there, but it was strangely muted. What device are they using to mask their signature? His science officer, Mesra, stepped forward on her 8 legs. "Commander, we detect a simple metallic sheet covering the human, but our sensors also show something alarming. The human's brain activity has changed dramatically." The main screen filled with waves and patterns that made Vexthul's inner eyes widen. "Explain." "The human's consciousness appears to be operating on a completely different level now. They might be accessing some kind of higher mental state we don't understand. Our database has no record of humans doing this during combat." Around the command center, other Zaxri officers shifted uncomfortably. Their species never lowered their guard during battle. The idea of deliberately changing one's mental state while surrounded by enemies went against every military principle they knew. "Perhaps," one officer suggested, his voice quivering, "this is the legendary human battle meditation we've heard about. They say humans can enter states of combat awareness that make them nearly unstoppable." Vexthul watched as another squad of his troops approached the human's position. They moved with extreme caution, weapons ready. Suddenly, a small piece of metal fell from a damaged pipe. The noise sent the entire squad scrambling backward in panic. "No one goes any closer," Vexthul ordered. "Keep all positions secured. We'll wait to see what this human is planning." Hours passed. The human remained still. The Zaxri forces grew more anxious with each passing minute. Their compound eyes kept watching every shadow, every corner. The silence of their prey was worse than any battle cry. In his command chair, Vexthul's legs wouldn't stop twitching. He had studied human warfare extensively before this invasion. Humans were supposed to be relentless, always moving, always fighting. This behavior didn't match any known human combat doctrine, which meant either their intelligence was wrong, or this human was doing something so advanced that the Zaxri couldn't even understand it. Either possibility terrified him. The Zaxri War Council gathered in the emergency chamber of their command ship. The room buzzed with nervous energy as 12 high-ranking officers clicked their mandibles in worry. Their legs tapped against the crystal floor, creating a rhythm of fear. "Our intelligence must be wrong," said General Zixpar, the oldest of the group. His armor showed marks from 100 battles, but none had confused him like this one. "We studied humans for 3 cycles before this invasion. They never showed this behavior before." On the large screen in front of them, the humans' vital signs continued their steady, slow pattern. Next to it, recordings played of previous human battles. The council watched clips of humans fighting through injuries, staying awake for days during sieges, and showing incredible endurance. Science Officer Mesra stepped forward again, her data pad glowing with information. "We thought humans practiced something called active combat meditation during battles. But look at these brain wave patterns." She pointed at the screen with 2 of her arms. "This is different. The human's mind activity shows regular cycles, like some kind of maintenance mode." "Maintenance mode." Commander Vexthul's antennae curled in confusion. "You mean they can repair themselves during battle?" "Unknown," Mesra replied. "But whatever this human is doing, they've been doing it for 4 hours now, and their vital signs are getting stronger, not weaker." The council chamber filled with worried clicks and chirps. One young officer's legs shook so badly he had to leave the room. Meanwhile, in the mining facility below, Indy Porter rolled over in her sleep. She pulled her emergency blanket tighter around her shoulders and started to snore softly. The sound traveled through the facility's ventilation system. Alien troops on 3 different levels heard it and immediately called for backup, thinking it was some kind of sonic weapon. Back in the council chamber, Tactical Officer Rick Stoll brought up a new set of data. Look at the humans' history. Before we attacked, they worked for 36 hours straight, helping with a critical maintenance issue in the facility. Then they fought us for 6 more hours. That's 42 hours of constant activity, Mesra calculated quickly. No Zaxxery could maintain battle readiness for that long. We need regular rest periods every 12 hours. General Zixpar's antennae went completely straight. Are you saying this human pushed themselves beyond normal limits, knowing they would need to enter this special state later? They planned this. It gets worse, Rick Stoll continued. Look at where they chose to make their stand. The screen showed a map of the mining facility. They're in the central control room. From there, they could access any system in the facility. They could be preparing anything while in this trance state. The council fell silent as they considered this. Their entire invasion plan had assumed humans would fight like they always did. Head-on, aggressive, relentless. Nobody had prepared for a human to use tactics they couldn't understand. Commander Vexthal looked at the steady vital signs again. The humans' brain patterns were starting to change slightly. Whatever they're planning, he said quietly, I think we're about to find out. These readings suggest their special state might be ending soon. The War Council looked at each other with all 4 of their eyes wide in fear. None of them wanted to be the first to suggest retreat, but they were all thinking it. The panic started with a rumor from the lower decks of the Zaxxery ships. A cleaning drone had overheard the War Council's discussion about the humans' strange powers. Within an hour, the story had spread through the entire fleet. I heard humans can repair any injury while in their battle trance, whispered one young soldier to his squad mate as they guarded a corridor in the mining facility. His antennae shook as he spoke. That's nothing, replied another guard, all 8 legs shuffling nervously. My cousin fought humans in the Centauri sector. He said they can go without food for weeks if they're angry enough. Annie shifted in her sleep, making the metal container next to her scrape against the floor. The sound echoed through the ventilation system. 3 entire squads of alien soldiers immediately called in sick to their commanders. On the command ship, Commander Vexthal was losing control of his troops. The perfect formation of ships around the mining facility had started to fall apart. Some vessels had drifted out of position as their pilots kept backing away from the facility. Status report, Vexthal demanded from his tactical officer. Rick Stoll's voice trembled as he answered. 17 squads have requested immediate transfer to other sectors. 28 soldiers have reported mysterious illnesses, and 1 ship's entire crew is demanding hazard pay for potential psychic damage. Psychic damage. Vexthal's antennae curled in confusion. They think the human's mind is reaching out to them in their dreams. Rick Stoll paused. Sir, we've never had a desertion before. Not in the entire history of the Zaxxery fleet. This human is doing something to our people's minds. In the facility below, Amy rolled over again. Her hand knocked against her water bottle, making it fall over with a small clink. The sound sent ripples of terror through the alien forces. A squad leader reported seeing strange shadows. Another claimed their weapons were getting warmer, surely being affected by the human's mysterious powers. A third squad became convinced that the human had turned invisible and was standing right behind them. Science Officer Mesra rushed into the command center, all 4 arms waving data pads. Commander, the humans' brain patterns are becoming more active. They might be preparing to end their trance state. What should we expect? Vexthal asked, trying to keep his own legs from shaking. Based on our observations, when humans exit their combat meditation, they often show increased strength and tactical awareness. Some reports suggest they become even more dangerous than before. The commander looked at his tactical display. His once proud invasion fleet was falling apart. Ships kept backing away from their assigned positions. Ground troops were huddled in tight groups, jumping at every sound. Some were even pointing their weapons at their own shadows. Sir, Rick Stoll called out, we're getting strange energy readings from the facility's power core. The human might be interfacing with it somehow during their trance. The energy readings were actually just the facility's normal power fluctuations, but to the terrified alien forces, every beep of a computer, every hiss of steam, every creak of metal became evidence of the humans' mysterious powers. Commander Vexthal watched as another ship drifted out of formation, its crew too scared to maintain their position. He had started this day expecting an easy victory. Now he wondered if his entire fleet would survive encountering just one sleeping human. Captain John Matthews stood on the bridge of the Earth rescue ship Star Horizon, staring at his tactical display with a mixture of confusion and amusement. His fleet of 5 ships had arrived expecting to find a fierce battle. Instead, they found something much stranger. "Run that scan again," he told his sensor officer. "I want to be sure about what we're seeing." "Same results, sir," the officer replied. 287 alien ships, all in scattered formation around the mining facility. They keep backing away from it like it's going to explode. And inside, we detect only one human life sign. Vital signs suggest deep sleep. John rubbed his chin thoughtfully. The alien ships were some of the most advanced he'd ever seen. Their crystal-like hulls gleamed in the light of Mars' distant sun, but their formation was a mess, like a group of scared cats trying to watch a mouse hole. "Let me get this straight," he said. "We got a distress call about an alien invasion. We rush here at full speed, and we find nearly 300 alien warships scared of one sleeping human." "That's not all, sir," his communications officer spoke up. "I'm picking up their transmissions. Want to hear them?" "Put them on speaker." The bridge filled with the sound of panicked alien voices, translated by their computers. The humans' brain patterns are changing again. Did anyone else feel that psychic wave? My weapons aren't working right. It must be the humans' mysterious powers. I saw a shadow move. We're all going to die. John had to cover his mouth to hide his smile. He dealt with the Zaxru before. They were usually excellent warriors, disciplined and fearless, but something about this situation had completely broken their nerve. "Sir," his tactical officer called out, "the alien fleet is starting to notice us. Their ships are, well, they're trying to hide behind each other." On the main screen, John watched as the massive alien vessels actually tried to squeeze behind one another, like children playing a game of Not It. Their perfect crystal ships bumped and scraped against each other as they all tried to avoid being in front. "Should we hail them?" asked his communications officer. "Not yet," John replied. "First, get me everything you can about our sleeping friend down there." "Who are they?" The data came up on his screen. Lieutenant Amy Porter, engineer turned accidental warrior. The report showed how she'd helped evacuate the civilian miners, then ended up trapped in the facility. The last security footage showed her making a bed out of storage containers and settling down for a nap. "Sir," his sensor officer spoke up again, "the alien ships are sending out some kind of emergency signals. I think they're calling for diplomatic ships." John looked at the tactical display again. The mighty Zaxri invasion fleet, terror of 3 star systems, was being completely undone by one sleeping human engineer. He knew this would become a legendary story at every space bar from Earth to the outer colonies. "All right," he said finally. "Let's not spoil their panic just yet. Hold position here and wait. Either our friend down there will wake up soon, or the aliens will scare themselves into surrender. Either way, I want to see how this plays out." His crew nodded, all of them trying to maintain professional expressions, but he could see the laughter in their eyes. This would definitely be a story to tell their grandchildren. Amy Porter woke up slowly, the way people do after a really good sleep. She stretched her arms above her head and yawned. Her makeshift bed of storage containers hadn't been very comfortable, but she felt much better after 8 hours of solid rest. The security monitors were still working. She glanced at them and blinked in surprise. The aliens were acting even stranger than before. They were all huddled in tight groups, and some were hiding behind corners, peeking out like scared children. "Well, "That's weird," she muttered to herself. She reached into her pack and pulled out her emergency rations. Inside was her most precious possession, a packet of instant coffee. The mining facility's break room was just down the hall, and she knew it had a water heater that still worked. On the command ship above, Commander Vexthal nearly jumped out of his exoskeleton when the alarms went off. "The human is moving," shouted Science Officer Mesra. All four of her arms were typing frantically on different screens. "Their brain patterns have completely changed. They're fully awake." "Battle stations," Vexthal ordered, then realized his troops were already at battle stations. They had been there for 8 hours, getting more scared by the minute. "I mean, just watch what they do." Amy walked down the corridor, holding her coffee packet and an empty cup. The alien troops hiding behind a cargo container saw her coming. All 16 of their eyes went wide with fear. They pressed themselves flat against the wall, trying to become invisible. She looked at them, shrugged, and kept walking toward the break room. The aliens didn't shoot. They were too busy sending panic signals to their commanders about the humans' casual display of fearlessness. In the break room, Amy found the water heater still working. She smiled. At least something was going right today. She poured the hot water into her cup and added the instant coffee powder. The smell of coffee spread through the ventilation system. The aliens had never smelled anything like it before. 3 different squad leaders reported that the human was using chemical warfare. One entire ship's crew became convinced that the strange smell would turn them into humans. "The human is using some kind of power source," Mesra reported, watching Amy stir her coffee. "They're mixing unknown substances. It could be a weapon." Amy took her first sip of coffee and sighed happily. She hadn't had any caffeine in almost 2 days. The warm drink made her feel much more ready to face whatever came next. She walked back to the control room, coffee in hand, passing more terrified aliens. They watched in horror as she casually drank the mysterious brown liquid. Surely this was some kind of strength potion, some secret human combat drug. Captain John Matthews and his rescue fleet watched all of this through the facility's security feeds. His crew had to mute their microphones because they were trying so hard not to laugh. "Should we tell them it's just coffee?" his tactical officer asked. "Not yet," John replied, watching another group of alien soldiers dive for cover as Amy walked past them, sipping her drink. "This is too good to interrupt." The HFY War Council was in complete chaos. The human had finished their mysterious trance state, was consuming unknown chemicals, and showed no fear at all. Clearly, they were dealing with some kind of super soldier. Amy just enjoyed her coffee, completely unaware that she had become the most terrifying thing the alien fleet had ever encountered. Commander Betty Crawford had seen many strange things during her years in the diplomatic service, but this might be the strangest. She stood in the mining facility's main conference room, trying very hard to keep a straight face as she listened to the HFY ambassador. "So you see," Ambassador Kexty explained, his antennae twitching nervously, "we wish to discuss terms of peace. The human warrior's display of power has convinced us that humanity is far more advanced than we previously believed." Betty nodded seriously, though she wanted to laugh. Behind her, Amy Porter sat quietly, holding her second cup of coffee. The young lieutenant looked confused about why she was even in this meeting. "Could you explain exactly what impressed you about Lieutenant Porter's actions?" Betty asked, knowing the answer would be good. The ambassador's 4 arms moved in excited gestures. First, the lieutenant used advanced psychological warfare by entering a death-like trance state in the middle of battle. Then, upon awakening, she consumed a mysterious brown power-enhancing potion with no fear of our forces. Amy almost choked on her coffee. She started to say something, but Betty gave her a quick hand signal to stay quiet. Furthermore, the ambassador continued, the lieutenant showed complete immunity to fear. She walked past our finest warriors as if they were not even there. Clearly, humans have mental abilities we cannot hope to match. In the back of the room, Captain John Matthews, and his crew were biting their lips to keep from laughing. One officer had to pretend to cough to hide a snort. "I see," Betty said calmly. "And what terms of peace do you propose?" The ambassador straightened up. "The Zaxri Empire wishes to establish diplomatic relations with humanity. We will withdraw all forces from your territory. We also offer technology exchange, trade agreements, and," he paused dramatically, "we request training in your advanced mental techniques." Now Amy did speak up. "Wait, you mean taking naps? You want us to teach you how to take naps?" The room fell silent. The ambassador's antennae went completely straight in shock. "Naps?" he asked, his translator struggling with the word. "You mean this was not an advanced combat meditation technique?" Betty stepped in smoothly. "Ambassador, it seems we have an opportunity here to learn from each other. Humans regularly need periods of sleep to maintain our health and strength. We call short sleep periods naps. It's not a weapon or a power. It's just how we rest." The ambassador stared at her, then at Amy, then at his own data pad full of reports about the terrifying human warrior. "You mean we were scared of sleeping?" "To be fair," Amy said, sipping her coffee, "you were also scared of coffee." The ambassador's color changed to a deep blue, which Betty's cultural training told her was the Zaxri equivalent of blushing. The other alien officials in the room started making embarrassed clicking sounds. "Perhaps," the ambassador said finally, "we should focus our cultural exchange on understanding these basic differences between our species. And maybe we could start with this coffee ritual." Betty smiled diplomatically. "I think that's a wonderful idea. Lieutenant Porter, would you like to demonstrate proper coffee preparation for our new allies?" Amy grinned and stood up. "Happy to help. Though I should warn you, human coffee might be a bit strong for your taste." As Amy led the curious aliens toward the break room, Betty heard the ambassador mutter something to his assistants about updating their military intelligence protocols. She made a note to herself. When the official peace treaty was written, she would make sure it included a clause about the human right to nap during negotiations. Sometimes, she thought, the best diplomatic victories came from the simplest misunderstandings.